radial engines, tail wheels, air shows, and the lessons that make better pilots. Welcome to Retro-Aero with Czech pilot Dale. Aviation history, practical airmanship, and honest hangar stories. Let's fly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Retro-Aero podcast question of the week. I am your host, Czech pilot Dale. Thanks for tuning in. If you have a question for us and our question of the week, please feel free to submit it to aviators@retroaero.org, or if you are a member of our WhatsApp group, feel free to submit it on our podcast subgroup. Okay, so this week's question is, what is the most dangerous habit an experienced pilot can develop? That's a really good question. In fact, complacency, and actually we have a name for it in the airline industry. We call it normalization of deviation. That is, if you do something that's outside the standard operating procedures, outside the limits, or something that maybe bends the rule a little bit, and you get away with it, you start to think to yourself, well, I got away with it once, I can get away with it again. And eventually you keep doing the same thing over and over. You keep stretching that boundary outside the regulations or the standard operating procedures. Hey, it worked once, why won't it work again? And that's where the danger comes in. Once you start to exceed those limits, once you start to exceed your own capabilities and you get away with something, the brain naturally starts to think that, well, you can get away with it the next time. And the time after that, and the time after that. And that normalization of deviation is usually what will get an experienced pilot into trouble. It's happened time and time again. That's why strict adherence to standard operating procedures, strict adherence to the SOPs or the limitations within the POH or the regulations becomes important. It's not important what we do while we're being observed. It's far more important what we do when nobody is watching. We have to hold to the standard. That doesn't mean you should never try to learn a new skill set or get better in a crosswind. Certainly, you should start to learn what your limitations are and what the limitations of the airplane are. But you should do it under the observation of someone who is far more skilled, more experienced than yourself. Or at least make sure that when you set a limitation, whatever your personal limitations are, that you don't exceed those on the day you're making a decision. That is to say, if your personal limits are 15 knots of crosswind, and that day the winds are at 17 knots, don't change your personal minimums that day. If you're going to go out and say, my personal minimums are 15 knots, but I'm going to go out with a flight instructor and there's 20 knot crosswinds, that's okay. But you're not going to change them that day. If you've written down your personal limitations, which most of us highly recommend, the day you're making a decision to go or no go isn't the day to change your limitation. Don't allow yourself to fall into the trap, no matter how many hours you have, of normalization of deviation. Thanks for listening. That's my question of the week answer. And remember, keep the oily side down unless you're doing aerobatics. And I'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Retro-Aero with Czech pilot Dale. Thanks for flying along, and remember to always have airspeed, altitude, and ideas, or at least 2 out of 3. Bye for now.